Good afternoon and welcome to another edition of Off the Cuff. In last month I talked about my upcoming State of the City address, talked about our accomplishments over the month of December. So now that I've delivered my State of the City address, we've started to knock off some of the goals and proposed legislation that I announced during my State of the City address. This last council meeting, we actually finally approved the reduction in the sewer fee for the city of Oswego, bringing the water and sewer bill total was $1,100 annually. Now it will become $900 annually because we reduced the rate of $50 a quarter. That equals $200 a year from the sewer fee. And we were able to do that because of all of the progress and the good news that's come out of winning $5 million in New York State water grants in 2 years. We finished the consent decree, the second phase of this consent decree ahead of schedule and under budget. We've invested heavily in our wastewater facilities, about $3.16 million in 3 years. So a lot of those larger projects are behind us. And we've negotiated some other deals with Oswego County to save some money as well and raise revenue. So, and because of the management of the Camden Group, which also helps, we were able to cut down operating expenses and be able to offer that reduction. So we officially did that last night. As luck would have it, the next round of sewer bills will be hitting residents' mailboxes today, tomorrow, and Thursday, and we already made that adjustment for these bills. So you will begin to see and feel that rate reduction and those savings almost literally immediately as the sewer bills enter your mailboxes over the next couple of days. We also, out of the State of the City, I announced the handicap park coming to Hamilton Park on the Oswego's east side. So the handicap playground is, first of all, advocating for those with disabilities in our community is something that I'm personally passionate about. So I wanted to combine that passion with our initiatives to improve our parks and offer more unique amenities to make Oswego a more attractive place to live, work, and raise a family. So we are building a handicap accessible playground for children 5 to 12 years old. It's fully handicap accessible so they can access the entire playground. It's going over at Hamilton Park, which already has a standard playground in it. So it'll be built right next to that playground and will be totally wheelchair accessible, a wheelchair swing, and really anybody will be able to use the park. And I think it's a good idea. It's a way to help grow Oswego, but more importantly, it's a way to show to the Oswego community that we're an inclusive community, and we of course take in and consider everyone when we're making important decisions here at City Hall. So the construction of that playground will begin in June. It's estimated to take about 2 weeks. The DPW will help with that installation. We used Parkitects to buy the playground, and they will help with the installation. It was about $100,000 cost total. So we expect that to take 2 weeks, and we'll look to have a ribbon cutting at the end of June to officially kick it off. And I'm looking forward to that project, along with many other park projects that will happen this summer. A bit of good news, I announced that the City of Oswego's credit rating went from A2 to A1, which is a direct reflection of our smart budgeting, our level of investments in city facilities, some of the grant money we've won. So it really just goes to show that all of the budgets over the last 3 years, in some instances, I would say sometimes it seems like we're spending a little bit too much money, but we're doing it to improve our parks, improve our infrastructure, and ultimately move our city forward. And it's a return on investment driven strategy. So we don't spend money that we don't think we're going to get back in some way, shape, or form, whether it's financially or by making Oswego a more attractive place to get people to move to or visit. It's all return on investment driven. So we're finally seeing the results and effects of that spending come to fruition. And I think the credit rating really speaks to our approach to city government and how we're allocating our resources and spending our money using that strategy. And that credit rating allows us to be more competitive for grants. It allows us to, we are more appealing to businesses, developers, investors, because part of that credit rating relies on the growth of our tax base and the local economic climate here in the city as well. So seems like that credit rating and that announcement really kind of summarizes everything we've done in the last 3 years and kind of proves that at least financially we're making the right decisions while moving the city forward. So that announcement was something that made me very proud and very excited for the years to come. We just have to maintain the momentum, keep the local economy stimulated, encourage people to buy local, spend their money local, and we will be just fine financially in the years to come. And then another announcement, and the final point for this edition of Off the Cuff, is the unveiling of the city zoning code that I did last week at the committee meeting. It's been about a year and a half that we've worked on the comprehensive rewrite of the city zoning code. Right now our zoning code is extremely antiquated and really has led to the degradation of our neighborhoods. A couple big changes in the zoning code. Right now, the majority of our residential area in the city is an R3 district, which means you can have several home occupations, you can have really some disruptive activity in residential neighborhoods. What the new zoning code will do is take really our most dense and our core historic neighborhoods and eliminates most, if not all, of those home occupation opportunities, along with some of those disruptive activities like funeral homes in our neighborhoods and things like that. We're limiting it to really schools and religious institutions, and everything else would have to be, obviously, go through a very public process, going through a permit. So that's probably the biggest change. Also, the same can be said for a downtown. We are identifying a core downtown really on West 1st, West 2nd, and East 3rd, East 4th area. And what we're saying there is we're implementing new sign guidelines, new facade guidelines, but also limiting the uses. So the biggest change there really is no drive-throughs in our core downtown, no tattoo parlors, no smoke shops, no piercing shops right in the core downtown. We still have places for them outside of the core downtown, but we're limiting the use and limiting the really the choice of establishments that can be in our core downtown. So there are two of the biggest changes. I'll say that if you really want to go in and get a flavor for what we're proposing in the zoning rewrite, we've already put everything up on the city website. We actually have every page of the old zoning code and the proposed zoning code. We have a table of uses for the proposed zoning code, which means if you have any sort of establishment, any building, any sort of activity, and you want to see where it would qualify to be implemented or where it wouldn't, you can go on the table of uses. It's very easy to read. It's literally a table and see what zones it could go in and where it couldn't go under our new zoning code. We have all the definitions, then we also have the map. So we have the map of the old code, we have the map of the new code, so you can see where you live or where you own a business, see what it is now, see what it's proposed, and then see exactly what that means and if the use would still be allowed. One big point is nothing changes immediately. Everything that's existing now is grandfathered in, so you don't have to worry about a business that exists today having to close and relocate because it doesn't work. Everything's grandfathered in. It's only for different uses and different changes once the code is adopted moving forward. One last point is the zoning code. It took literally a year and a half to conduct this rewrite, so we don't want to rush the approval process through the public process. So I proposed it at the committee meeting. We will authorize a public hearing on the next council meeting, so that's 2 weeks from today, or 2 weeks from yesterday. At that point, we'll have another 2 weeks to have the public hearing and the vote. So right now, that's the schedule, and so we're looking at about a month and a half approval process. And during that time, we would just ask people to go on the city website, look at all the proposals, or come into City Hall and look at all of the proposals and what the rewrite does, and make sure that your voice is heard and you offer feedback during that month and a half process, because it's very important. And we just don't want to make it seem rushed through, because it is an extremely important document and will have an effect on this community for decades to come. The last zoning code rewrite was in 1980. So that was some 40 years ago. So presumably it could be another 40 years before we sit down and look at this again. But I think if you look at this proposed zoning code, I think it's a great document. It's very clear. It takes out a lot of the ambiguous language that led to so many problems before throughout the city, and I think puts the city on the right course for business development and also neighborhood revitalization, because we're putting in the right criteria for each district. So it's a document I'm proud of, and I hope that it gets approved almost as is, but maybe perhaps some minor changes depending on the public dialogue. So that's really it for the last month. We have a busy month coming up, so I'll talk to you next month. Before we do that, there's 2 questions and 1 recommendation, so I'll run through those. The first question is, why is the water and sewer rate cut only for homeowners? I'm a renter and responsible to pay my water bill. And my bill was $88 a quarter. Now I pay about $291 a quarter. I feel that renters should be included as well. So first, I have no control over if a landlord wants you to pay for sewer and water, or if they include it in their lease. However, what I would say is we are cutting the rate for homeowners first, because their rate now was about $275 a quarter, and they, gallon for gallon, dollar for dollar, we're paying more than anybody in the city. So that's why I think I have an obligation to help those homeowners first, not to mention they're owner occupied, and the home that they live in isn't an income generating home. It's their home that they actually live in, as opposed to a landlord's home that he or she's making money off of. So I think the homeowner who's not making money off the home deserves the break first. But getting down to the actual dollars, the homeowner on the flat rate is paying $275 for water and sewer no matter how much they use. If you have a meter, you're paying $205 for the base rate, and then you're only paying beyond $205 for what you use because you're on a meter. So if you're paying more than $205 and you're on a meter, you're paying that because you're using more water, and you're paying it really by the gallon. So you're paying for what you use, as opposed to the flat rate, where they could really be getting charged $70 more than $205 for water or sewer that they're not using. So I would, of course, encourage everybody to get a meter. It's really the most fair way to be charged, because you literally are charged for what you use. So I would encourage everybody, owner occupied or not, to get a meter. However, it's hard to argue that you aren't being charged for what you use if you have a meter and your bill's more than $205. So I think that the homeowners deserve the flat rate first and foremost. Number 2 is they live on Bridge Street, and a lot of the businesses aren't shoveling their snow. So I would say it's obviously the responsibility of businesses and homeowners to shovel out the sidewalk outside of their home or their establishment. If you find that we have code enforcement on patrol Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, after a significant snowfall, usually what we will do is go out on patrol, and we will focus in this areas around schools where kids will be walking to school. We'll also focus on the main thoroughfares like 104 and Utica Street, but really we focus on schools because that's where bus stops are. That's where a lot of kids are walking to and from school. And what we usually do is focus in those areas, but also if there's a property in your neighborhood, or a property along Bridge Street in this case, and they never shovel the sidewalk immediately after the snow falls, that's who we want brought to our attention. Because the city's so big, we can't possibly cover the entire city within the first day after a snowfall. So we focus around the schools, but we will come and respond to a complaint if you levy a complaint, and at that point we give the property owner 24 hours to fix the situation before we issue a fine, and either the city will clean it and bill it to their taxes, or they usually comply by that point and still have to pay the fine, which is put on their property taxes. So please just bring properties like that to our attention. We tend to focus on properties that are always out of compliance, which we usually know who they are once we get 3-4 snowfalls in the winter. We know the homes to go to because they never ever shovel the snow in front of the sidewalk. So we usually have our rounds that we focus on, but please bring any other situation to our attention and we will respond. And then the last question or recommendation is each fall many Oswego residents rake their leaves into the road and leave huge piles. It reduces the width of the road. Perhaps they could be reminded each fall of the city policies and use biodegradable bags. We actually have biodegradable bags that we're trying to have residents use because they're easier, where the DPW workers can pick up the bags, throw them in the truck and keep going. The plastic bags actually have to rip out, dump the leaves out and dispose of, so it saves our crews a lot of time. It's better for the environment. So we're already trying to implement that policy on a voluntary basis. And then every fall we do try to remind people of the policies, but it only helps so much sometimes. So I'll take the opportunity that in the fall, please take the leaf piles, try not to put them right in the road, but on the edge of the curb, and our guys usually will come by and get them within a week. So, and of course, bag them if you can. That always saves our guys a lot of time, and it prevents the leaves from being spread out should wind come through the neighborhood. So that's it for this edition. Thanks for the questions and the recommendation, and I hope this update keeps you informed